Right, so today we're going to be looking at essay structure and how you can start identifying what things you should talk about in your essay and in what order roughly. Now, when we are looking at essay structure, as we mentioned, it's about having a stepping stone. We want stepping stones to lead us from our first idea all the way down to our final idea. And obviously, if we have an essay question, what does our reader expect us to do? They expect us to answer our essay question. So I'm just going to get my whiteboard. Okay, so when we're talking about, this is all going to be about essay structure today. So I won't, unless you want to, we might have a little discussion at the very end about what you found so far, but it's primarily, and I don't expect you to have all your research done by this point, but because we're going to move on to creative writing on Monday, I want to give you some tools that you can start identifying what you need to start planning your essay. Okay, so essay structure and planning is what we shall be looking at today. So as we remember, if we go back to our little stepping stone analogy, we want each idea to logically follow on to the next one. And what you can do to test your idea is it needs to be as understandable that you could explain your argument to a small child. That's how simple it needs to be. That's how each step needs to be as understandable, because making the assumption that, oh, they're an adult, they can understand it if I've written it really in a complicated way is, yes, they might be able to, but it will still take a lot of brain power to understand it. And you don't want your essay to be hard work, because then your reader won't want to read it. And they'll think even that they'd have to have or expect a lot of value out of your essay to actually push themselves to read it if it's complicated to read. So that's how you can test. So when we've got our ideas, in our essay, we know that we have our introduction. We're going to have body paragraphs. So we've got our essay structure. As I mentioned, we've got our stepping stones. And each one logically takes us to the next idea. So we've got each idea here. Now, I've done lots of stepping stones. You may have more, you may have fewer. For 1,000-word essay, you probably will have 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9. You may not have as many as 9. And this would be your final idea. Now, as I mentioned, so in an essay, we have introduction, we have body paragraphs, and we have our conclusion. This is the basic structure of an essay. If you wrote an essay, a very short one, you would need a minimum of 3 paragraphs. Minimum. For a 1,000-word essay, actually, I would expect more like 5 to 7. So I'm going to rub that out. In history or religious studies, well, it really depends how your school tell you to order your ideas. Actually, I've had some schools that say that your 12 to 16, the 16 marker, the really big one. I've had some students say their school should do what was it, like 9 paragraphs, but it's only because they split up their point. They're like argument, counter argument, and then a counter to that argument. Yeah, they really split their for and against, and they make them have 3 points or 3 ideas. Yeah. I've had other yeah. Yeah, but so and then in English, like you've got your it's different. Yeah, but then in your English you'd need 3 body paragraphs as a minimum. But for this, when you're handwriting your essays, you're probably not writing more than 500 words. So this is going to be a much more involved essay than you're used to. But the reason why I want you to do this, and each paragraph have a minimum of 100 words. Hundred words, 10 sentences. Yeah, this will be completely different to what you've done in GCSE, and the way in English it will be maybe a little bit more similar, but what I find in the GCSE subjects is they tell you don't need an introduction. Yeah, for some of them, and then depends on the school, and I understand why they do it, but if you wrote an essay without an introduction anywhere else, you'd be marked down. And it just wouldn't make sense because you wouldn't have introduced your argument at all. Because remember in the very beginning of the week when we looked at the 3 different texts and we looked at the 2 paragraphs, so we looked at Carl Jung, Ayn Rand and Jordan Peterson, we looked at the very beginning of each of their texts, and what did we notice about those first 2 paragraphs? Do you remember what we know? Yeah, exactly. They introduced an argument. What else did they do? Yeah, so tell a reader what you will discuss. And what else? Uh-huh. Yeah. So how could you yeah. So what did they do? When they provoked the reader, how could you say that? Yeah, but what if we had to summarize what they did? Do you remember what did we talk about? Do you remember what we talked about on Monday and Tuesday about how we make something interesting? You're provoking the reader, yes, but you're provoking a reader by telling them what? Yes, you will need a solution. Yeah. Your solution is the answer to a question, by the way. Actually, no, you need to do that. You should be able to understand exactly what is going to come in the body paragraphs if you just read the introduction and the conclusion in an academic essay. You should be able to have a whole idea of the entire essay. And actually, when you're at university and when you go into A-levels, this is the best way to read academic articles because they're so involved that to check that the paper is actually relevant to you, you read the introduction, you read the conclusion, and you can get the whole point of the essay. it needs to be, you need to lay out a logical path. So in a way, the introduction, you lay out the map. And then this point that is missing is you introduce a problem. Do you remember we talked about the problem? Okay, so this is what you're going to do. You're going to introduce a problem. And now this might be this could be with anything. But you have noticed a gap in the research or a problem with how people analyze or interpret your topic. So you've noticed that there are differences in how a character is presented between movie and comic, and different interpretations of those different mediums. Okay, you've noticed a problem when it comes to defining what greatest means. And you've got some people saying one person and then other people saying another person. And you both, as scholars, which is what you are going to be giving your opinion and saying, well, here is the research, but here's the gap, and I'm going to fill this gap with my solution. And by introducing a problem, you are going to critique scholars before you. And that's okay. And then I'm just going to add your solution to the problem. Okay, so now that we've talked about introduction, we're going to introduce our argument. We're going to tell the reader what you will discuss, introduce a problem, and present a solution. So this is your roadmap of the essay. You will also, when you're talking about tell the reader what you will discuss, you may also need to look at definitions. Give definitions. Why do you think giving definitions is important? Yeah, so why is defining important? It does show the understanding of the question, but think about your reader. What? Yeah, and it also helps them to understand where you're coming from. Because if they have one understanding of a word or a topic, and you have another understanding of a topic, and you haven't defined what your understanding is in the introduction or in the paragraph that you're talking about, you are going to be on a different train of thought, which means that maybe they won't even think that your essay makes sense. So in order for them to actually accept your argument, you need them to understand where you're coming from. So giving definitions, like I've been going on at you about what's the definition of greatest and asking you a ton of questions about that. That is why. But what does greatest mean might need to be a body paragraph for you because it is a large question. And I've been saying, be aware of your assumptions, because will the person reading your essay have the same assumptions as you? You don't know. So there is a place for assumptions, but that at this present time, because you guys are still learning how to write essays, I want you to be very aware of assumptions, both to do with definitions, view of the world, and make sure that you are incredibly clear as to what yours are so that you can build a logical argument with one idea leading to the next that can sustain an argument. And if your definitions aren't clear, your argument may fall down. So that's one of the things to answer your question about how to sustain an argument. Okay. So now we're going to talk about body paragraphs. And I am going to give you guys, and what we'll do is I'm going to give you both time next week and in the following weeks to come and talk to me about your essays as well. So that I'm not leaving you to just go and write it. So you will be able to ask questions and you can submit a plan and a draft if you'd like to. And I'll go through it and tell you where things might need a little bit of work.
Thanks for joining me in today's class. If you'd like to know more about essay writing, I have a whole blog series all about how to write an essay, but not just that, how to brainstorm the question, plan, research, and once you've written the essay, how to proofread and edit it. If you've got a question, don't forget to leave it in the comments. And of course, don't forget to like and subscribe so that you don't miss a video ever again. Good luck with your studying, and I'll see you in the next one.